So welcome to the Penrith Museum of Printing. So what we're going to do today is take you on a little journey from 1450 right through to about 1980, 1990. So and everything in this museum's live and working, except for a couple of the other blokes out the back. We'll try and take you through every process of the printing process. Now, all right, so we've been here since 2001. In case you don't know, it's about 24 years, and we'll take you through that now. And just over here behind you there's a Sydney Morning Herald from 1857. We're going to talk about that a bit later on. The mural on the wall is Gutenberg's original office in 1450, where he used converted wine presses to print, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there. And we'll go through all that with you shortly, and lots of other memorabilia in here. So the Gutenberg first printed back in 1450, and that's there on loan to us. And people are really interested in having a look at that. We've got another, the other volume out there. Show you what happened. So Johann Gutenberg was born in Mainz in Germany in 1497, around about, and in 1450 he was given the credit for inventing movable type. And movable type's all this stuff you see behind me. He was a goldsmith by trade. So he knew about pouring metals and making moulds and making type. So he was the guy that sort of was able to create this. Now, the reason he created it was because I think they were sort of trying to get more information out there, and the learned and the priests controlled everything back in those days across Europe. So they were controlling the world. And when he came on, he was not popular at all, because he invented the way of disseminating information a lot quicker. Now, before Gutenberg, yes, there was similar sort of stuff to this back with the Koreans and the Chinese, but he's the one who developed this process, which was enabling the information spread of mass information right across Europe. So he was, like I say, not popular. They took him to court and they charged him with the dark art of printing, and they took the business off him, the learned and the priests, but they continued it on, and he got credit. He died a pauper in about 1460 odd, 10 years after his invention, right? So he had like a tray like this, and he had all the capitals up here in the top bit, and all the lowercase down the bottom bit, and that's your term uppercase and lowercase. That's where the term came from originally, and everybody knows about uppercase and lowercase. That's exactly how it started. And it's lasted like that for about 200 years, when they then changed the cases around and put them into one case to make it easier, because they were using two trays for each case, which is a bit of a pain if you've got a lot of typefaces, right? He invented and moulded and cut type back in the day, and very clever man, yeah? So what we've got here, we've got up to 72 point in the lead type, right? And we go all the way down to 4 point, which we'll show you in a minute. So it's little tiny type like that, like it had in the Herald used to be 6 point. We've got 4 point, and you had to put it together letter by letter, word by word, out of these trays. Every time you choose a font, you've got to pull the tray out of here to change type or change size. So let's just make out that this is like Times Roman. So you pull out your tray, you'll pick it up, and it's as heavy as all heck. It's all lead, tin and antimony, and you've got to start setting your line. And when you're finished, you've got to put your tray back in. You want to change type, you've got to get into a different tray, right? So one day we've got Times Roman down here, say, for example. Next to it we might have Times Italic, then we'll have a rack of Times Bold, Times Light, Times Expanded, Times Condensed. So you could have 7 racks of each font for all the type sizes from 6 point down to 72 point. After we get to 72 point and you want to put some big headings on, you've got to go to the wooden type, like up here. So behind you there, we've got lots and lots of wooden type in those drawers there. Pull one of them out. We've got trays and trays of wooden type, all beautifully sorted out. They don't normally sit in those trays, but we put them in there. So we've got the wooden type, we've got the lead type, and we've got that. So when you set type, you take what they call a setting stick, which is this thing here, and we go up to the type case, and a couple of you can have a go in a minute, so think about putting your hand up, and you'll stand in front of the type case, and you'll just set your name, one word at a time, and then what happens then, we put it all together, and we set one line, and then we set the next line, and when the setting stick is full of lines, we then slide them off onto that table there, and then John will take you through that process in a minute. So we're going to do that, right? Now when we've finished, after we finish printing the finished job, we then got to put all the letters back in the case, right? which is a real pain in the butt. And if you look at the layout of the case, you'll notice that you won't notice. I'm going to tell you, but you'll be able to see. All the capitals are over here on the cases you're going to use, and all the lowercase and numbers and punctuations here. The P's there and the Q's there. And that's where the saying comes from, what's your P's and Q's. Because when you bring the letters back in the case and they're upside down and back to front, people confuse them, and the next poor person that comes along and starts setting, because if they're so fast, you can't see the letters because they're all laying down like that case there. You've got to know where to get them from. So you learn, we talk about that case as being a keyboard, if you like. So you learn your keyboard, but there's no letters on the keys. You've got to know that case by heart, and we used to have to learn that when we were younger, me and John. But we didn't actually do much of that stuff because we're not that old. That's clearly obvious, isn't it? So watch your P's and Q's came from this industry, as did uppercase, lowercase, and quite a few other things. Make more sense, right? So that picture there, or that one up there, the same. That picture on the back wall, that's all compositors setting type, right? And a compositor would set a couple of, to do the Herald you saw out there, 8 hours to do one column, 8 hours, one bloke, so they do a few paragraphs each, yeah? And we'll talk about that later on. So, John, do you want to take them now on this little bit now? We come over to this bench here after we've started showing you how to set.
We work on a galley like this. It's just a steel tray. And you build your job, whether it's a job like this or a page of a newspaper. These two pages here was a job we just did for Lewis Gallery, and it was an artist by the name of Regina was doing an exhibition on the Black Panther, our elusive Black Panther of the Blue Mountains.
Oh, I've seen him.
Yes, and she come in here and she gave us this. This was the copy. She said, "Can you reproduce that?" And we said, "Yeah." So we did. So there's the 2 pages. We printed it, and it was hanging on the wall in our exhibition, which is that there. There's the 2 pages printed. And I don't know whether anyone remembers one of the football games over here. A young boy got his tooth knocked out by the football. One of the players kicked the ball out. It accidentally hit the young fella in the mouth and knocked his tooth out. The player gave him his boots as a memento. Didn't give him his tooth back, but gave him his boot. And that story there is about that. Yeah. So it's made up of.
How long ago was that?
Last season.
Last season. End of last season. Yeah. When the stadium was still going over.
Okay.
They gave me boots, and the father and the son were wrapped because they got that. And it says there that and the story that John was talking about was the theme for the Lewis Gallery show was spot the difference.
Yeah.
You had to see what was truth and what was not. And the heading says Elon Musk buys Penrith Park, and they've got fans, fang, forms. So he grew a fang instead of a tooth. So the mythical panther on the Blue Mountains is down in the Blue Pool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So there. So once we've got the job made up, we proof it. Bit of ink on a roller, proof it, and it goes to the proofreader. Today we don't have proofreaders. It's all spell check or nothing. But in our day we had proofreaders. She'd mark any correction. It was normally women. She would mark any corrections, come back, we would correct it. Then it gets locked up in a steel frame to go whichever press that it's going to be printed on. Once it's printed, it comes back to here. We dismantle it if it's going to be not used again. If it's going to be used again, we put it back on the galley and it goes in a rack to be saved. So the next time it comes in, we've saved the money of the labour of doing it all again. Just goes straight back on the press and get printed again.
But we charge them for the job.
So, does a proofreader read with a mirror?
No,
So-
because she'll get that.
Oh, the printed. Okay. So I'm
She'll
thinking
get a
that's
printed
all-
copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we read upside down and left to right.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, she gets a printed copy, marks the corrections on this, comes back to us, and we correct it.
It's got like a galley proof.
All has to be exactly the same height, otherwise it won't print.
It either won't print or it'll touch from 1880s, right before the linotype came on. So 430 years, imagine this, of no change in technology. Today we get a change in technology every 3.5 seconds. Don't we, right?
That's right.
So now, 430 years, every book, every magazine, every newspaper you read printed before 1880s was done like this, right? And you got to get that in your head.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. There was
So
no
how
computers.
many hours you reckon of work for people to do a book?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. It'd take you each page would take one bloke 8 hours. Probably to
No,
set
that
up a
was
page.
long.
No, that's a column. But
Column in the newspaper,
that's
8
a column.
hours.
But
Yeah,
a,
for
a
one
book,
person.
a book would still be about
Yeah.
an hour.
Wow.
It's a big, and that's all the same font, but that's
Yeah,
all 12
yeah.
point. But that's 12 point too. 12 or
Yeah.
14 point in the
but
book.
also,
Yeah.
just remembering, as Bob
This
said
is 30
before,
point.
when the copy come out to the typesetters, the foreman would split it up between all the compositors, right? So each compositor would probably only set in 3 or 4 paragraphs. Then it would
Okay.
come back to this stone here, and then a hand comp would join it all back together to make the story. Otherwise, yeah, take forever. And you go mad.
And you can see by the number of people up on the wall there, there's a lot of comps.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there was 36 apprentices started when I was a kid that come on the newspapers. 36 of us. Right, and then those numbers shrunk each year as the times started to change.
Smithsonian Institute, they had all the plans for this. So the guy that built this from Eden, right, down in south coast of New South Wales, took him 2 years. He got the plans from the Smithsonian Institute, and he was that pedantic about it that he did everything correctly. There's no nails, there's only dowels and other bits and pieces, and all the metal parts were done by a blacksmith. Right, nothing modern machinery, nothing cast. It was all done by a blacksmith. So it would have been forge casting, or forge welding and stuff like that. So this is basically the works. This is what they call a platen, and it's a wooden block, right? In those old days, like from the old wine presses and things like that, where they used to squeeze everything down. And you could only make them so big because otherwise they'd warp and twist and carry on with the weather and everything would change. So you had to keep it to a certain size. And then, so this one would print 2 pages. In 2 prints, 1 print there and 1 print there. So basically we've got a job set up here, and this is a excerpt from the Gutenberg Bible. And in the original days, they used to get the ink and they'd rub it like this. They'd get the ink and they'd put it on these jobbers, and you'd warm it up, and then when the type came along, you come up to the type and you just go on top of the type.
So what are they
And that
called?
would ink it up. They're jobbers.
Dollars?
Yeah.
Another word.
Yeah, another word. We get a bit more modern these days, and we get the old roller from over here. Bob would tell you we probably bought that at Bunnings, but I think it was supplied by a printing company.
I wouldn't tell them that.
And then we ink up. There's probably not enough ink on this. I'll do a proof. It's called a tympan, and this is a brisket. Right, so what you got the job set up on the tympan, you put the brisket in front of it with a hole cut in, so that only goes over the job. So when you put the paper down over the top, it wouldn't smudge or it'd be picked up directly, so you keep the papers clean. So normally in operation with a printing press, there's 2 people. One to do the inking and one to keep the hands clean for all the paperwork. So you drop the tympan down, you crank it underneath the press. We're doing it in one piece, and then you push this across, and that's the impression. And then you take it back, and you crank it back out, and you lift the tympan back up again. And with any luck, the job's sitting there.
Beautiful.
Right.
Very good. Very good.
And then you do the next page.
That's
to
the
do the
first
next
page of the
page,
Gutenberg
you have
Bible.
to reset it all. Right? So that's that. That's how that works.
It's been inked on the slab over there, and I'm rolling the ink using a roller over there.
Yeah, Reg.
And a bit of paper. I put it and this ink comes down.
And this Colombian was designed by an American. And he put his own face inside. You'll see on the counterweight inside to see a carving of his face in there. And this particular printing press printed the Cardboard Chronicle. Got dragged across the Blue Mountains on a bullock dray, across the old Cox's Road. That would have taken a while. It would have taken him 3 weeks to get it to Cargor from Sydney.
What you're going to do is ink again and put your the paper on there.
So you do about 2 copies a minute with one of these. So it'll take 120 copies an hour. What do they do now? 100,000.
So this press, so you know, now those heralds I showed you outside, this press, as Robert said, that came from Carcoar, and it printed the Carcoar Chronicle up until from 1872 to 1939 it was, 1872 to 1939. And then the press was laid rusting out at Carcoar, just near Bathurst there, you know, that little town. And this was in the back paddock rusting, and John B. Fairfax, who's the great-great-grandson of the original Fairfaxes, saw it and took it down to Broadway in Sydney and had the apprentices restore it, and it sat in the Fairfax foyers after that, right up until 2018 when Channel 9 bought Fairfax, and we got it because Channel 9 weren't interested in us. Bloody printing press because they don't, you know, they don't like papers. So we've got it, donated to us, and we restored it because it was the same press that was used to print those papers out there in the foyer of the Sydney Morning Herald. Same brand. So it printed the Carcoar Chronicle in 1832 to 1939, and it was exactly the same model and press that was used to print the original City Heralds. Okay. And that's why he chose to restore it because, you know, I'll tell you more about that later. Right?
How many City Heralds would...
In the 1860 something like that, 1880, you can move right there. And because they send the kit to you, the crate, and you put the machine together, but they send a mechanic with it. And he'd show you how to put it together and operate it and stuff like that. But if you're in Australia, good luck reading instructions. Right. Anyway, so basically this works the same way. It's got, the platen is now here, right, that does the impression. Push. Your type is in here. So that is the chase, right, the form. That slips in there, locks in, bang, and then the ink is on this disc. Okay, and there's rollers that go up and down. As you pedal away, it's now mechanical, and you pedal away, the rollers will pick up the ink, run it down over the type, okay? Then you put the job in there, and you wait for the ink up a bit, and then you print. I'll do the first one first so you can see what it looks like. So that's the first page. Right?
Oh gosh.
So you all get a copy of this, okay? So what happens is you just keep printing. So you put one in at a time, you get a rhythm up, and if you get the rhythm up correctly, and you've got the little ink feeder over here with that roller topping this up all the time,
The ink goes from here onto here, is it?
ink goes from there onto that roller there,
Roller there.
You watch this.
right?
I'll hold it off it. You watch. You just don't want to dirty this, right? You watch it.
Yeah. So it'll go.
There. Picks up the
You
ink.
can pick it up off
There.
there and run it back over there as it comes along,
Put it on there.
and it keeps feeding it, right? Now when it does that, if you don't do it that way, you've got to stop after about 20 or 30 pages to top the ink up, right? This way you can keep going. 15, Robert. 15, okay.
I'm going to print one for each of you now. Instead of doing 2 a minute, you watch him go now. We're going to print your job. So that was 1800, and this one, early 1800s. This one's now
If
1880.
I'm in good form and the ink's coming up, probably get to 1200 an hour.
faster, mate. Come on.
Yeah, I know, but it's
A bit slower, but he's a bit cold today.
hang on.
Uh-oh.
It's not sitting on
Count your fingers.
it's got to sit on those things.
Now you can see what we talked about danger before. There's no guards, no nothing, right?
At least you can service them easily in oil.
Yeah.
By the name of Mergenthaler in America, came up with the idea of inventing a typesetting machine. So he thought to himself, rather than just doing one letter at a time, why can't I do a line at a time? So he actually called his machine a linotype. And that's the ones you see over there. That little girl there is a 1902 model, Model 5, and it still operates today. The one next to it is a Model 8, 1922, and that used to typeset in the P and Times here in Penrith. And that was one of the machines that started this museum. And the operator that used to use that machine found it sitting in the old shop down there near the Red Cow, and asked the owners, "What are you doing with it?" And they said, "Well, it's going to scrap." He said, "We can't let that happen." So he said, "Can I have it?" And he said, "If you can get it out, you can have it." So he got it out all right. Till we got this shed done. Brought it in here. So that's a 1908 model. And Mergenthaler patented everything. And it wasn't until the 1940s, when his patents started to run out, that some other people got in on the act and started building these. What they actually did was just refurbish his machines. But they couldn't call it a linotype, they had to call it an intertype. And that's where that name comes from. So, the first thing that Mergenthaler did, he had to have a mould, the same as Gutenberg did. And the mould is that. Now straight away you can see there's two typefaces on it. So that takes care of two type cases over there on the one mould. Light, well that'd be bold and italic on the one mould. These teeth, I said he was a watchmaker, these teeth transport that mould right around the machine. Right now all those moulds are in here. And using this keyboard, which is that there, you've got your lowercase, the same as over there. You've got your lowercase here, your capitals here, or your uppercase there, and punctuation numbers are in the middle. It's a very, very fast keyboard. It was actually invented for the most common words in the English language. The word these there. So you're not using your not moving your fingers too much. So, using the keyboard, you assemble your line of moulds here for your line. Once you're happy with that, because also on the other side you can read the letters actually engraved in the other side as well. You've got the mould there and the letters engraved in. So you can read it before you transport it across to here. It locks in a set of jaws and there's a pot of molten lead behind here. Now that molten lead will then squirt lead into these moulds and it will actually put the words on top of a line. Like that. Your line will come out here. That arm will then come down and pick the moulds up by the teeth, take them up there. It will transport along that bar up there until it gets to a point where there's nothing to hold it, so it falls off. It actually falls off into this right channel with one of those.
Seriously.
You've got to remember
seriously,
too that there's lead in it, sure,
Yeah.
but there's also tin and antimony. Now, the tin was used to harden it up because in these presses over here, if it was just straight lead, it would flatten it. So Gutenberg added tin to harden it up, but unfortunately when it cooled down, it shrunk. And as Bob said before, everything had to be the same height. So then he added antimony. And when it cooled down, it expanded and brought it back to the right height. 1450. And we still use that same formula in our lead today.
So when you're finished with those lines, do they go back in and get melted again?
Yep. The beauty of this system here is, whereas over there, once the newspaper or book, whatever was printed, every letter had to go back in the case. Here, we save the moulds. And all the lead goes back in the pot.
Yep.
So fully recycled. One of our jobs every Friday was to, when we were apprentices, to melt all that lead down and make these ingots ready for the next week. For the line top operators. Class these machines as the 8th wonder of the world.
Wow.
And I'll show you what. This one is electricity. Before that, in the old days, they used to have a donkey engine or a diesel or tractor or anything out the back paddock with a shaft running right through the factory and belts coming off it. And each one of these machines would have its own belt. The pot would be melted up, would be melted down by gas. Okay? But this one's electricity. And this is one of the pots that I was saying out there that are actually on today. So we'll produce one.
Now he is the fastest typesetter in the West. Look at the speed of him go.
That's how quick it is to set a
He
line.
just did that. How long did it take you guys to set your line over there? Same.
So, from there, that is now casting that line. All your moulds being transported up there, hanging on by the teeth. Your line will come out here. And we'll fall back in there.
Really. Incredible. And he sits here all day setting lines, then he takes them over to the comp room, then they'll galley proof them, read them, and if he's made a mistake on a line, they'll bring it back to him, and he'll set that line again, and he's going to take the old line out and put the new line in. And he goes so fast, like he's won awards. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. Remember I said you had to put your word spacing between each line? Well, here they use these things called spacing. So John will show you how that works.
That's actually
So that's all hot. That's why they call it hot metal. Because it's bloody hot.
So to get a nice even edge down either side of the column, you have to put more space in between the words, right? And it was as simple as this. It was a wedge. Mergenthaler invented this as a word space, so that when it comes across here and goes down to be cast, an arm will come up and push this, push it up, and it gets thicker. So as it gets thicker, it pushes the words out. So you get a nice even edge down either side, and the exact amount of space between each word, it's all done with that.
That's called justifying your line.
Justifying
So you
it.
justify your line, and over there we had to put extra space in to justify the line. This does it automatically. And if you want to be really smart, and Doug knows this because we heard it earlier, if you want to be really smart and someone says, oh, that book was printed you know, in the year 2000, and you can tell people, you can look at it and you can tell them whether it was done by hand or by machine. Because if it was done by hand like those heralds out there, the word spacing between each word is different. Whereas on this machine, the word spacing is exactly the same because of that technology. Clever.
That. And it's the same thing applies. You lock it into the machine, you've got a pot of molten lead there, turn it on, pot of molten lead comes underneath it and squirts lead into it. And there's Patricia. See that? That's still quite warm, you can feel it.
Grab hold of that, Patricia. Not hard. Hang on, grab it. Won't hurt you now.
Won't hurt you now. I'll trim it down for you after. You can take that one home with you.
What do they call it?
And recast. Moulds go back in the case. Here's the lead. At the end of the job, it goes back in the pot.
1980s, right? And we'll talk a bit more about that later, but they went a lot longer than that. So we were using this process right for a whole period from 1450 to the late 80s. The computer, Microsoft was 1975, Internet was 1995, Google started in 1998, and I think Facebook was 205 or something, right? So all that whole period was like that, and then all of a sudden in the last 25 years it's all changed to computers. It's quite amazing, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Goodness knows where we're going to go after this. So what happens, we've just taken you through the fact that everything was hand set by compositors over there, and linotype operators over here, which were compositors like John was, and we're setting the type, setting the type, setting the type. But what about the pictures?
That is basically the height of all type, 0.918 inches high. There's another letter there, and what you have is a system of casting the type which you've seen here now done on the linotype. Now the linotype comes out like that, and you will notice it's exactly the same height as the hand setting of type. So the obvious thing to do, if you wanted to do an image, it would have to be on the same plane, the same height as that. And they use wood, which you see. There's your wooden type. So I might say if you needed anything, it had to be the same height. So what they did do, there's a new one which hasn't even been used. You get a block of wood, and you can carve an image on there, and then ink it up with these, and you could put paper on it and it would print. This block of wood has already been carved. If you look at that there in front.
Wow.
Absolutely fantastic thing that they've done. You ink that up, put a bit of paper on it, and take the paper off, you get an image that looks something like that.
I'll pass that one around.
What type? Lino cutting.
What's that? What's the material?
Liner.
Liner.
The lino, in schools, one was learn how to do that. Take a print of that. There's a print of that.
So did the Western people prevented all this? Did they take the lino cut and woodcut idea from the Chinese and Japanese, or they may have known of it?
Well, they probably would have copied the same situation,
To
yeah.
get to that point.
Yes, they did it. Hand painting, on caves. Then it moved on from there. Then they started doing woodcuts.
That's the tools.
They all made woodcuts.
Just tell you, by the way, the Chinese and Korean use mainly clay.
That's the tools they used for that work.
It wasn't used.
Actually made up of about 9, one, two, three, 4.
So did this sort of come up in the early 1800s? They could decide to use a woodcut event, and then photography came after.
Yeah, I'll explain that
obviously.
to you in a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You had all these, what I'm basically on here at the moment is all was before the camera was invented. How they did it when the camera came along, if you had an image, something like that, or a drawing of that, you could now take a photo, and you all know what a negative is. You end up with a negative. If you now coat a piece of paper with light sensitive material, and you expose that onto the light sensitive paper, you now got your photo, the old time photos that we used to have. So it It was a process of moving from one form of creating an image to another. When the camera was invented, you could now take the image and you could create a printing block like this. This was created by using a camera. You had a sheet of metal with light sensitive material coated on here, exposed by the camera. It would harden the image, and then you could put this plate into acid and etch it out.
So that's what the acid did, is etched it. Yeah.
The acid etcher, the plate would be put in an acid bath, which agitated the acid, and it would eat it out. Because you couldn't leave it there too long, because if you left it there too long, it would eat away the very things you wanted. So what they had to do is they would do what they call a first bite on it, and then by hand you would paint out various sections of the plate. So it was a very time-consuming and very expensive thing to do, was to do a printing plate like this. You then mount it onto a block of wood, and you end up with something that's 0.918 inches high, which is the same as that. And then, of course, the camera got even smarter. You can now separate the colors. You go into yellow, magenta, cyan, and black, and with each color you would have a plate like that. So a color print, you needed 4 of yellow, magenta, cyan, and black to give you the image.
What's the time difference to being carved in one and then the photos came along?
6 months.
How much quicker?
6 months, yeah.
To make a plate compared to hand carving, minutes
Minutes, yes. Very, very quick.
versus hours.
Yeah.
I just mean, if you're carving out the wood compared to doing this newer.
Yes, well, yeah. Now we're talking, I don't know how many 100 years you could say between this very crude method of creating an image and very time consuming. It wouldn't do today, you know. They haven't got the patience even to make a printing plate anymore. They just send it straight to your phone. You know?
To get a 4-colour process, you need to make 4 plates.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
We'll show you that in a second. Yep. Getting to
4
that.
colors. The difference there is when the colors are separated, it's not. It may all look like dots or anything like that, but the yellow dots would run. If you look at the plate vertically, the black would go 45 degrees. So the yellow, magenta, cyan, black, although the different colors, they also fit very differently together to give you that image of 4 colors.
You asked that question about the woodcuts. This is the 1887 pictorial Australian, right? And we talked to, someone mentioned before about dots. Well, there's no dots in any of this. The dots didn't come till the camera came, right? So every drawing you see is lines. So there's either lines or no lines. Look at the clouds, no lines, right? So you got to carve these by hand on these wooden blocks. Where's the round one? There's the round. There's the wooden block. You can even see the bark on it, right? Right? Because people say that's not wood. It doesn't feel like wood to me. But there's the bark to prove it. Right, and then people say, what sort of wood was it? Because it doesn't look like wood, it feels like plastic, doesn't it? But the reason they use that tree, and the reason this is all in sections, originally we thought it, because it took so long to hand carve each block, they divided up and each person would do a bit each. But it wasn't. It's because the tree they used to make the wooden blocks is called the Turkish boxwood tree, grown in Turkey. Only grows to that diameter. And the reason they choose it, then they cut it to the 0.918 of an inch high, and they use those tools that Robert showed a while ago to hand carve, and you've got to carve it in reverse, right? You've got to carve it in reverse, to get it to print the right way around. And that's what they did, and they did that from the 1830s up until 1888. And this one here is 1 year before the camera came out, 1887. And people usually say to us, how many compositors lost their job when the linotype came along? Well, none, because of those heralds out there are only 6 pages. This thing enabled you to have 48 pages, right? So the camera came in the 1888, and these boxwood engravers lasted from 1830 all the way through to 1888, and every one of them lost their job because they were redundant. You couldn't give them another retrain them because they, well, of course they didn't. So that's what happened. And the reason they chose the Turkish boxwood tree, because it has very fine year rings, and the year rings were so fine that when you cut across the grain, it didn't fur up. And that's why they chose the Turkish boxwood tree for carving out these intricate damn things so accurately, right? And what they would do, and where's the round one gone? Anyway, so they'd get a little cushion, fill it full of sand. This is how they actually did it. Then they take the block, put the block on the cushion. They'd have the drawing here to copy. They use that little set of tools, and they move it around on the sand cushion to carve it out in reverse. Just incredible bit of art. This picture here is really a great example of that sort of work. You can't believe it's not dots like every picture you look at today is all dots. Incredible, isn't it? All lines, just lines, lines and lines and lines and lines. And when you watch those old shows on TV, you look at all the graphics. They're all lines. Pay a bit of attention next time you're watching. You'll see they're all lines.
Mistake of not patenting anything. So while he was still producing this one, the copies are already being made. This was produced on the River Wharf. That's why it's called the Wharfdale. And he ended up becoming part of the company with Dawson. And he became part of the company so that's how he kept his job and everything like that. Basically, it works an inline press. So what you've got is you've got a plate that rolls up and down. Right? The ink is here. And as you'll see this going along, you'll see a form coming up through there that's laid in the bottom there, and that's where the job is. That's the form. The ink goes on the rollers, runs over the letters, and then the paper goes in here and sits around this cylinder, so it's only actually pressing on a little bit at a time instead of the whole thing at one go. So you can do a bigger job with less pressure. So then we'll demonstrate how this one operates. And this is hand fed, so this will do up to 1,500 an hour, but you've got to hand feed each page in. And it'll only do one side.
One colour.
One colour. Right, so you've got to work out how many pages you want the paper to be, and you'll do, okay, I'm going to do 1,000 copies, so you have to do 1,000 of that page. Then you have to let that dry, and then you have to reset for the next page, completely. So what we've got in here is we've got the form of the last letterpress printed Melbourne Age. This is 1983. Right? So you'll see that forming up, and then we'll give you a production. So if John now presses the green button.
This is how you become a printer.
See how it's running up and down, the form's here. Right, and then the ink up and then the paper in.
printing at Letterpress Monday, offset on Tuesday.
Look how big the papers were in those days.
That's a broadsheet.
That was the Australian today. Yes.
Michelle
You
Grattan's
got
still,
the interest rate back in
and
1983.
Michelle Grattan was the journalist. Michelle
Only
Grattan's
14%.
still working.
And they say the wage that we got when we were working, when we got the wage to be able to afford all this sort of stuff, to do the same money for the poor kids today, they have to earn $66 an hour. And how many are doing that? So that's why we're all in trouble. Instructions is in the journal. So basically this works exactly the same way as that, except this is fully electrical, and this will do up to 5,000 an hour.
Why the great noise effect?
You can imagine having a room full of these.
Oh,
Yeah,
You must.
that was loud enough, but this is really loud. But this particular one was produced in 1936, and it was the second last one that we found out, second last one produced in Heidelberg before the war, when Hitler shut the factory down to produce tanks. Right? It was sitting on the dock until about the 1950s, when finally in 1955 it came out and got sent to Port Pirie in South Australia. And then about 40, 50 years later, it got dragged from Port Pirie all the way to Dorrigo, where it's produced the newspaper in Dorrigo from that time until 2023.
The Dorrigo Gazette from 1971 till 2023.
Now you'll see in this last form that there's still individual type letters and a lot of linotype. So he was using a linotype machine, but he was also hand setting to do this paper as a weekly. And he stopped when he finally couldn't get parts for his linotype, and he couldn't get enough advertising and support from council to keep going.
So how much would one of these machines have been worth?
I have no idea. That was £60 when it came out. So that's what, £60 would have been almost 2 years' wages.
Yeah.
So this one would have been in the 1950s, be about the equivalent, about 3 years' wages or something like that for the average company. So to invest in that sort of money, yeah.
So we got this from Dorrigo, because they rang John up, the guy that was printing the Dorrigo Gazette in 2023, and said, John, my linotype, what you just saw a while ago, was broken down, and have you got any parts for us to keep us going, because we're going to close in a month anyway, because we're finished, we just can't survive. So John, when he asked him for the particular part, we wanted this machine, we heard about it was coming, you know. So when he asked for the part, John said no, he didn't have it, but he had 50 on them. No, no, we didn't have the part, so he closed the paper down, and we got this machine, and it weighs 5.5 tonne. So me and Robert carried it in here off the truck ourselves. And Vince came down to give us a bit of a hand that day. But we got this off the Dorrigo Gazette. We had a crowd funding thing. We raised $5,000 in a week, all off industry and friends. And we raised $5 grand, and one of the biggest companies in printing in Australia these days is called Live Group, and they gave us $5 grand. And we've got brand new rollers donated to us by a roller company, and we got it down here on that, and it's in and running now as the last letterpress in Australia, producing the last letterpress pages, you know, which was a pretty good deal, you know. You've got to save this stuff.
Oh.
And we're trying to save all this stuff because it's living history, and we're proud to say that this is not a static museum where you walk in and just look at everything and then go, oh, that'll do. But here we can either bore you to death or take you through the whole process of how it all happened and it's good, interesting fun, you know.
Yeah.
So you've seen newspapers printed on the 1880 machine. This is 1936 machine. When we went up there, how are we going for time? We're going all right, yeah? You okay to keep going?
Yeah.
Yep. So in when we went up there to get this machine, we met the guy. He was 51 years old. He'd taken over from his dad or his grandfather or whatever it is, and the Dorrigo Gazette started in 1904, I think. But in 1950 they got out of Germany, went to Port Pirie for 20 years, and then from 20 years to 1971 to today it's here. And most of these presses are cannibalised, so you don't get to save them. But these are Heidelberg presses, are one of the best sheet-fed printers in the world. Sheet-fed, like business cards, wedding invitations and all that sort of stuff. And you saw how he had to hand feed that one. This one's picked up by these suckers here, right? Picks the paper up for you, so it's getting more modern as we go along. This one here's about a 1960 model, and this one here, you put the type in here, like you did over there, the foot-operated press. Type goes in there, picks the ink up from the back here, and you turn her on, and paper up, prints it, stands there, and you take the paper out and get your printed job, and I can sit here and drink coffee. It's, I want to go a bit quicker, I just wind her up a bit. Goes up to 5,000 copies an hour. Pretty good, eh? So that does all those sort of jobs, right? And that's pretty special. That was given to us by Sydney Tech at Ultimo, where most of the printers used to train to print letterpress on this very printing press. Yeah. So that's our little. That's our sheet-fed printing, right?